Israel's attack has exposed Iran's lack of firepower. Iran has struggled to respond effectively after Israel killed many of its top military commanders. It is a week since Israel began its largest attack ever on Iran, and in conventional military terms it is clear that Tehran is under extreme pressure. Israel has been able to achieve superiority over Iran's skies at extraordinary speed, within hours of launching its surprise assault. Its military claimed on Monday to have knocked out 120 Iranian air defense systems through a mixture of air and drone strikes, about a third of Tehran's pre-war total. In response, Iran's most effective weapon has been its stock of high-speed ballistic missiles, estimated at about 2,000 by Israel's Defense Force, IDF, at the outset of hostilities last week. But the heavy targeting by Israel of launch sites in western Iran, in underground bases such as at Kermanshah, coupled with Israel's grimly effective targeted killing of Iran's top military commanders, have left Iran struggling to respond militarily and presenting a significant threat. Iran has so far launched more than 400 missiles at Israel, but half, about 200, were launched in the initial retaliatory barrages last Friday. Since Monday, the size of its missile barrages has reduced to a maximum of 15 to 20, including 15 on Thursday afternoon, compared with up to 40 during the weekend, according to a count compiled by a U.S. think tank, the Institute for the Study of War. Iran's ability to manufacture new weapons is also likely to be limited, estimated by the U.S. to be 50 a month before the hostilities broke out. The sheer speed of ballistic missiles makes them dangerous weapons, and a number, about 10%, continue to evade Israel's sophisticated air defenses, including a strike on the Soroka Medical Center in the southern city of Beersheba on Thursday that wounded 76. But the munitions mostly do not appear to be effectively targeted at Israel's military-industrial complex, aside from an attack on the refinery at Haifa in northern Israel on Sunday that led to the shutting down of the facilities there. Intercepting ballistic missiles is primarily the task of Israel's newest air defense system, Arrow 3, which has a 1,500-mile range and can knock out incoming missiles beyond the Earth's atmosphere, and its predecessor Arrow 2, though the U.S. has been providing help with a THAAD system and destroyers based in the eastern Mediterranean. Neither Arrow system is cheap. The cost of an Arrow 3 interceptor has been put at $3.5 million, though other estimates suggest a figure of $2 million and $1.5 million for Arrow 2. The Israeli business newspaper Globes has suggested that the total cost to Israel of Arrow interceptors has been $1 billion to $1.5 billion since October 2023. A key question, however, is how many interceptors Israel's military has available, a concern compounded by a report in the Wall Street Journal, which cited an anonymous U.S. official as saying that Israel was running low. Stock levels are kept secret, and Israel, well aware of the Iranian ballistic missile threat, is considered unlikely to have chosen to attack Iran without at least enough interceptors to match its assessment of the likely threat. Nevertheless, sophisticated defensive missiles take time to manufacture, a problem long revealed in Ukraine, where Russia continues to fire more missiles than Kyiv has available air defenses. In less than a week, Israel has told allies that it is further ahead in its attack than it expected to be, having killed 21 out of 22 senior military figures in the first 24 hours, and 10 out of 12 nuclear scientists. The country's jets face almost no air defense threat as they fly over western and central Iran. Israel has so far acknowledged the loss of one drone, meaning they are able to target sites in the country with apparent impunity. Even if Israeli stockpiles of attack missiles run down in the next week or two, and there is no U.S. intervention, its air dominance means it can continue to attack at a slower rate. Iran's capabilities have been exposed as inefficient, concluded the missile analyst Fabian Hinz in a paper for the International Institute of Strategic Studies, while the Israeli leadership, at least for the time being, is accepting the risks of ballistic missile strikes on its population centers. As Hinz puts it, the deterrence balance between the two countries is unraveling, and it may only change back in Tehran's favor if suddenly a greater number or higher proportion of its remaining ballistic missiles strike population centers or key sites in Israel. There is no sign of that yet. Iran says diplomacy with US only possible if Israeli aggression stops. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi says he supports more talks with European counterparts despite lack of progress. Iran's Foreign Minister, Abbas Araghchi, has said that his country is ready for more diplomacy with the US only if Israel's war on his country is brought to an end, and the aggressor is held accountable for the crimes he committed. After several hours of talks with European foreign ministers in Geneva on Friday, there was no sign of a diplomatic breakthrough, or a resumption of negotiations with the US. Araghchi said, Iran is ready to consider diplomacy once again and once the aggression is stopped and the aggressor is held accountable for the crimes committed. We support the continuation of discussion with Britain, France, Germany and the EU, and express our readiness to meet again in the near future. Late on Friday, Donald Trump said he was unlikely to press Israel to scale back its campaign to allow negotiations to continue. I think it's very hard to make that request right now. If somebody is winning, it's a little bit harder to do than if somebody is losing, but we're ready, willing and able, and we've been speaking to Iran, and we'll see what happens, he said. Araghchi said he was willing to continue talks with his European counterparts since they have not supported Israel's attacks directly. But he said Iran was seriously concerned over the failure of the three countries to condemn Israel's act of aggression, and would continue to exercise its right to legitimate defense. He also said Iran's capabilities, including its missile capabilities, are non-negotiable, and could not form part of the talks, a rebuff to the French president, Emmanuel Macron, who in an earlier statement said they should be included in the talks. With Israeli diplomats and military commanders warning of a prolonged war, the route to direct talks between the US and Iran remains blocked, leaving the European countries as intermediaries. After Friday's talks between Araghchi and his British, French and German counterparts, the UK Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, said, "This is a perilous moment, and it is hugely important that we don't see regional escalation of this conflict." The French Foreign Minister, Jean-Noel Barrot, said there can be no definitive solution through military means to the Iran nuclear problem. Military operations can delay it, but they cannot eliminate it. The talks are being held against the backdrop of Trump's threat that the US could launch its own military assault on Iran within a fortnight, a step that would probably turn the already bloody war into a full-scale regional conflagration. European diplomats said they came to talks to deliver a tough message from the US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and Special Envoy, Steve Witkoff, that the threat of US military action is real but that a diplomatic pathway remains open. But without direct talks between the US and Iran, it is hard to see how an agreement can be reached to curtail Iran's nuclear program in a way that satisfies the US headline demand that Iran must never have a nuclear bomb. Trump suggested that European efforts would not be enough to bring any resolution. He said, "Iran doesn't want to speak to Europe. They want to speak to us. Europe is not going to be able to help in this." The European ministers said they had expressed their long-standing concerns about Iran's expansion of its nuclear program, which has no credible civilian purpose and is in violation of almost all provisions in the nuclear deal agreed in 2015. The EU's foreign policy chief, Kaja Kallas, said, "Today the regional escalation benefits no one. We must keep the discussions open." Earlier on Friday, Macron said the European offer to end Israel's war would include an Iranian move to zero uranium enrichment, restrictions on its ballistic missile program and an end to Tehran's funding of terrorist groups. The proposals were surprisingly broad, spanning a range of complex issues beyond Iran's disputed nuclear program, and appeared likely to complicate any solution unless an interim agreement can be agreed. One proposal recently aired is for Iran to suspend uranium enrichment for the duration of Trump's presidency. The concept of uranium enrichment being overseen by a consortium of Middle East countries, including Iran, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, remains on the table. Macron, already accused by Trump of publicity seeking this week, set out a daunting agenda. It's absolutely essential to prioritize a return to substantial negotiations, including nuclear negotiations to move towards zero uranium enrichment, ballistic negotiations to limit Iran's activities and capabilities, and the financing of all terrorist groups and destabilization of the region that Iran has been carrying out for several years, he said. In the previous 5 rounds of talks, the US insisted that Iran end its entire domestic uranium enrichment program, but said it would allow Iran to retain a civil nuclear program, including by importing enriched uranium from a multinational consortium. Iran claims that as a signatory to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, it has an absolute legal right to enrich uranium, a position neither the European nor American powers have endorsed. In the past, European negotiators have proved more adept than their US partners in finding compromises, including the temporary suspension of domestic enrichment, a principle Tehran reluctantly endorsed between 2003 and 2004. And that's it for today's news. Thanks for staying with us to the end. If you found this update helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the bell icon so you never miss a story that matters. We'll be back soon with more updates, insights, and stories that impact your life. Until then, stay informed, stay safe, and take care.